Friends, at the outset, I must pay thanks to the organizer for letting me talk on this platform. It's supposedly to be a carotid workshop, and unfortunately, we cannot have a live workshop in India as on today. All of us knows about it. Let me show my presentation. What's a carotid Doppler studies are? How do we do it? And what are the implications for subsequent interventions? Why we need a carotid Doppler for a cardiologist. I always quote this sentence: without inspiration, the best power of mind remains dormant, and there is a fuel in us which needs to be ignited with spark. And why is that for a cardiologist? Number of times we are getting a referral for a carotid evaluation in cases of a carotid embolic strokes, which couple of our fellow colleagues would like to refer to look for a source of an embolisms. As far as vascular Doppler is concerned, technique is concerned, we need a very high resolution transducer close to 10 to 12 megahertz, since the depth is minimal and we look at a linear phase array transducers. We start from a longitudinal view, and let me go and straightforward show you a live recording from my own lab. How do we do a carotid Dopplers in our lab? That's how we sit on the head of a side of a patient. Patient's head is looking towards us, and then we put a transducer in a linear fashion, as we could see over here, right on either side of his neck is getting closed up. And this is a linear phase array transducer in long axis view. And if you look at simultaneous scanning of this carotid vessels, we could look at a common carotid artery. And by angulation of a transducer anteriorly and posteriorly, we can look at both external as well as internal carotid vessels. Similarly, we can go to short axis view. We can look at both the vessels together, and as we move cranially, the common carotid vessels get bifurcated both into internal carotid as well as external carotid. As this spectrum, we are moving cranially on this particular section. This is a carotid valve which happened just a couple of minutes back, couple of seconds back. Now it's a common carotid from caudal to cranial, and we can look in whole section of a carotid vessel. We can look at intimal medial thickness in short axis view. Now we are moving caudally, cranially. Gradually we come to an area of a carotid bulb dilatation and both vessels 1 and 2, which happens as internal and external carotid vessels. Another thing, same in a longitudinal sections, we look at a internal carotid and external carotid, and the difference between internal and external carotid is the internal carotid artery is a bigger one, it does not have any branches. External one is a smaller one, anteriorly placed, and it does have a branches, all these vessels, and that's how we differentiate between internal and external carotid vessels. On top of that, if you have a Doppler flow pattern on top of these evaluation by putting a duplex scan, the external carotid vessels will be a high resolution, high resistance vessel, and an internal carotid vessel will be a low resistance vessels. It's not only that, we can look at the vertebral. The most important thing of this option is we can look at the vertebral vessels also. By angulating a transducer posteriorly towards the occipital side, posteriorly, we go from a carotid to vertebral arteries, and we can look at all 5 segments extracranially, as well as looking at its origin from whichever the vessel, right or left side from a subclavian artery. Moving on from my live recorded demonstration to what all we look for in these carotid vessels. This is an example for a common carotid and its bifurcation. Couple of techniques which helps in evaluating these vessels, like I call them more as a gimmicks, like a B-flow methods or a BF flow methods, which helps in determining the flow in these particular vessels. However, in a normal subject, the flow is always laminar. If you can look at this particular flow in a common carotid vessel, it's almost a laminar flow. This is the branches for external carotids, and we have a high resistance flow in external carotid vessels. On the contrary, it does not have any branches in internal carotid. It's posteriorly placed, bigger than external carotid, and it's a low resistance, saying to say that they have a definite diastolic flow subsequently. Another most important parameters which we evaluate as in today practice, apart from looking at a cardioembolic stroke, is looking at the intimal medial thickness. And this subset is very important in a country like ours, where obesity and on top of that diabetes is rampant. I see almost 1/4 or 1/5 person is suffering from a diabetes as on today. Looking at this intimal medial thickness just before bifurcation of a common carotid artery helps in looking at this person, are they suffering from endothelial dysfunctions or they have already developed an increased intimal medial thickness. Very good example, look at the anterior side, look at the posterior side. We can look at the whole of the intimal media in this particular section of a common carotid artery. We can measure them by doing a maximum, or we can look at the mean of these intimal medias. Here is the intimal medius which is significantly thickened in presence of no stenosis, and these are the people who have already developed an atherosclerosis. Look, the thickness is more, but there is no flow obstruction or a flow restriction in these kind of vessels. This one paper from a JACE 2011 talks of even a small insignificant plaque in is independent risk factor for coronary artery disease. That's more than 37% of the people, they suffered from a coronary artery disease over a period of 7 years. And the plaque is present in ICA in presence of intimal or in the absence of intimal medial thickness, it suggests this kind of a phenomenon. This is another method with which we look at the peak, maximum and average of intimal medial thickness. One paper which got published in JACE 2012 about an year back, talking of a mean intimal medial thickness of more than 0.8 is significant for evidence of significant atherosclerosis. Then comes to a quality of a plaque. All of us knows the plaque can have a smooth surface, can have an irregular surface. Look at the density of a plaque, which is a fibrous, fibrofatty, or calcified. And this kind of a plaque, we can look at the quality of the plaques only at looking at the carotid vessels. Here is surface is almost smooth. It's both fatty, fibrous, and there's a definite element of a calcification. But certainly there is no, appears to be no no stenosis for this particular patient. Another, we can look at the dimensions, both longitudinal and short axis dimensions for these kind of plaques. We can measure their intimal medial thickness also before than that. We can look at the velocity, whether they are significantly obstructed or not. Another thing is, if we have a plaque, what will happen? Obviously, the systolic as well as diastolic flow velocity, they will increase in this subset of a population. Very good important parameters, what we look in carotids is the number of time we have a tortuous internal carotid vessels. If we happen to listen to these kind of people, they have a typical bruit in the carotid vessels. And we can look, this is a classical example for a tortuous ICA, this whole one diagram which talks of a static version. And here's an AVI clip of a same thing. And if you look at the velocity for these tortuous vessels, the systolic velocity is usually on a higher side, but normally the diastolic velocity does not appropriately tells you that there is a significant lesion in this kind of things. Couple of lesions as far as carotid vessels are concerned. Here is an example for a large plaque which is present at its origin of an ICA in a common carotid vessel with its bifurcation. Why these are important? As I said earlier, it is estimated that almost 50,000 to 5 strokes happens per year in India. How do we compare it? We says approximately our population is close to 5 times or maybe more than that of a USA. We don't have a large data to talk about all this, but incidence of a stroke is so large in our country. And one of our paper which got published talked about carotid stenosis, talking of almost 37% of a total lesion of a cardioembolic stroke, and majority of them, they were diabetics. And looking at all this, we should always have a carotid artery evaluations for these kind of things. Risk of stroke at 5 years, if the carotid vessel lesion is less than 60%, is almost 8%. That's 1.6% annually. And if the lesion is more than 60 to 99%, it's almost multiplies double of that carotid artery lesions. So that's what the significance and important of these kind of abnormality is. Then how do we classify these plaques as significant or insignificant? Many groups have looked at these kind of things, starting from Europe, moving on to North America, and then one group we talk of a common carotid groups populations. And if the systolic velocity is more than 2.3 or more than 2.5 meters per second, with a ratio of internal carotid artery versus common carotid artery ratio of more than 4, and internal carotid artery end diastolic velocity is more than 85, or some people says more than 95 centimeters per second, then we talk of almost 70% or more than stenotic vessel in internal carotid artery. Another one, the top, same thing, talked about another study from Radiology 2004, say the same thing, more than 2.5 meters of a systolic velocity, more than 85 to 95 centimeters of a diastolic velocity with a ratio of more than 4. You pick up any study, whether it's by European, North American, or common carotid vessels group, almost talks the same kind of a thing as far as carotid duplex study evaluation is concerned. This is another one talking of the same thing of a more than 2.4. And then the most important thing is what happens when we talk of its correlation either with angiography or with an MRI. I say, like when we evaluate by duplex ultrasound, the angiographic degree of stenosis tends to be overestimated, like in duplex studies. And this is very well true when we look at these studies by MRIs. MRI always relatively underestimates our study with the duplex studies. Then what's the take-home message from this duplex ultrasound is? Excellent examination screen for high-grade stenosis. If the stenosis is less than 70%, we may have a discrepancies. If the stenosis is more than 70%, we have a significant correlation with angiography and MRI studies. And this is one paper which talks of this particular phenomena, published in January 2007. It's talk of a spectral Doppler imaging. This is a lesion which is almost more than 70%, I'll say. Systolic velocity is almost 4 meters per second, and a diastolic velocity is more than 2 meters per second. And the author specifically said if the diastolic flow velocity and diastolic flow velocity is more than 90 centimeters per second, the very high likelihood that these people are suffering from a significant stenosis, which is more than 70% of a lesion. Next comes, how do we correlate these studies with angiographic findings? There are 3 methods, because that's one of the important issue is. One method is European group, second is a North American group, and third is a common carotid. In European group, we look at the stenotic lesion at the level of a stenosis. If we have a stenosis in internal carotid artery, we measure the internal carotid artery diameter at the same time. North American group, they measure the internal carotid artery diameter distal to the stenosis level, and the third group measure the internal carotid level with the common carotid artery levels. Amongst all these three methods, once we do an angiogram, and if you are an interventional cardiologist, you know which group, which method we have to compare with. And if you are referring that person to an interventional cardiologist, then you need to know with which method the interventional cardiologist has evaluated that carotid artery stenosis. Amongst these three methods, which is the best one? Compare three angiographic methods for grading carotid stenosis and examine the correlation between angiography and ultrasound factor methods. They were graded both for European, North American, and a common carotids. And amongst all this, using common carotid method was the most reproducible, followed by European group or European method for evaluating of a carotid stenosis. Why do we look for all these kind of things? Obviously, once we do a screening by duplex scanning, these people are subjected either to MRI or angiogram. And once we confirm their finding that they are more than 70% of a stenotic lesions, intervention needs to be done to prevent recurrent cardioembolic strokes. Couple of examples. Again, here's a lesion for 80 to 99% lesion in common internal carotid artery with flow velocity of 2.3 and a 74 meters per second. No confusion as far as the lesion, amount of a lesion which is concerned for this particular internal carotid artery lesion, both velocity as well as a Doppler spectrum pattern. Then our internal carotid vessel almost completely blocked. We do not see any internal carotid vessels over here. And subsequent frame will show like we have a significant lesion in internal carotid artery. Almost 100% lesion in right internal carotid artery. We can look at the whole obstruction of internal carotid artery right after bifurcation. Obviously, these people cannot be managed with intervention. Another issue, once we talk of a plaque, if it's smooth surface or irregular surface. Look at this plaque which is ulcerated, present at the origin of right internal carotid artery. And as happens in angiography, as happen in other subspecialty of vascular diseases, any plaque which is ulcerated has got a significant incidence for stenosis as well as throwing cardioembolic embolisms, especially in carotid vessels. They need to be tackled. And this is a very classical example. We can look at the plaque over here, which is ulcerated, and we can look at the flow into this particular plaque by a carotid duplex span. Number of times we can have a mass which is either compressing outside on top of a common carotid vessel at its bifurcation. Same picture, talking of a mass which has got a compression inside or outside of a common carotid vessels. Another subset where we always look for a vertebral artery along with the carotid is we can look at the vertebral artery origin on both sides by this duplex scanning. Here is a classical example. We can look at the main vessel from which the vertebral arteries are arising. As all of us knows, majority of these vertebral lesions, they happen at the origin of a vertebral arteries. And in people who have got a significant history of a giddiness or other features related to cerebellar syndromes, looking at a vertebral artery becomes an extremely important part. It's not only that, we can look at the whole of this vertebral artery in between the transverse processes. I can look at, or we can look at almost 5 segments of the vertebral artery in subsequent in between transverse processes. And as all of us knows, they have become ultimately they are intracranial vessels which supplies the circle of Willis in the posterior part. They have a low resistance flow, saying that they have got a systolic as well as diastolic flow velocities. We can look at their diameter, we can look at their flow velocities. And here's the left vertebral artery, here is the left vertebral artery which is blocked right at its origin. A classical example for this particular artery is. Couple of words for our managements. I'm not going to talk about all those things. In conclusion, I say that vertebral artery evaluation is a significant important part in cardiologist portfolios, people who specializes in echocardiography, subsequently in vascular studies, especially in carotids. It helps in delineating people who are suffering from a cardioembolic stroke or looking for endovascular or endothelial dysfunction in form of a carotid intimal medial thickness. In people who are suffering from a cerebellar signs, looking for a vertebral arteries, it's a very simple, straightforward method for evaluation non-invasively. And once we screen them for significant lesions, we can treat them with interventions, provide good results, so that these people, they do not suffer with the major strokes in a time to come. It's very easy to perform. Only thing is it requires a training hand and hand-to-eye coordination, absolute clear images of vessels, since they are very close to skin, and they are very useful for day-to-day practice. I don't classify somebody as a cardiologist, neurologist, or other specialty people. In fact, we have so much of an overlap with each other's topic that we need a coordination amongst all the specialties. Only thing is, one person specializes in one particular phenomena, the other person specializes in another phenomena. And once we look at these kind of a thing together, we are able to provide a better treatment to these subset of population who suffers from a cardioembolic stroke, and where the duplex scanning can make a really good help in day-to-day practice and providing good health and good care for these people. Thank you very much for your patience here.
Thank you very much. Very good talk. With 5-6 minutes for discussion. Do you think that at the present time we can refer for angioplasty or for surgery a patient only with a carotid duplex scan? Without MRI scanner, or do you need MRI scan before in the combination of these three methods?
Well, as far as my personal experience is concerned, believe my words, I never refer a person for MRI once we diagnose a lesion which is more than 70%. I showed 3 parameters and strictly stick to them. Systolic velocity of more than 2.5 meters per second, diastolic velocity of more than 1 meter per second, and CCA versus ICO ratio of more than 4. If I am able to find these 4 parameters together, I subject them directly for an angiogram. Problem with MRI is it always underestimates a lesion. You may have a significant lesion, but always MRI underestimate the lesions for us. And when we subject these patients subsequently for angiogram, majority of our findings, they correlate with angiographic findings.
Okay. Second question, what are your criteria to refer to the surgeon or for angioplasty? What are your criteria? How you can distinguish this lesion is better for surgery, this lesion can be treated by angioplasty?
Well, a very difficult question.
Do you evaluate the GSM
No, we
No,
don't do that.
no. So your criteria for surgery or angioplasty?
I always refer a person, once we do an duplex study, refer to a intervention, either to a interventional cardiologist or endovascular cardiologist, or to refer for MRI and subsequently send them for interventions.
Okay. Professor Buckley, do you operate a patient only with a Doppler?
In answer to your question, yes, on certain occasions. Uh, In general, we normally will want to look at an MRI of the brain to see if the patient has had any infarction, either silent or otherwise, because that may influence a decision to operate on someone who has an asymptomatic high-grade stenosis. If they've got multiple what look like embolic shower lesions in one hemisphere, the ipsilateral hemisphere. But I have operated on a number of people just on the duplex imaging, and it is perfectly acceptable to do that in the United States. Most of the time, by the time the patients come to us to be seen for carotid disease, they have already been imaged with an MR of the brachiocephalic vessels in the neck and an MRI of the brain, because the family doctor or the internist or the neurologist has already ordered those tests, and so they're already done. But occasionally we see someone who is not, and if that's the case and they have an imaging study which matches the duplex criteria which Dr. Gupta described, and we use pretty much that same criteria. I happen to use a end diastolic velocity in the internal carotid artery of 120 centimeters per second velocity. He uses 100. But other than that, we're pretty much the same issue. So I do operate on them without any other diagnostic tests, but in general, they almost all have had something done by the time we see them, either a CT angio or an MR angio.
Thank you.
Dr. Gupta, this is the set of the patients who are having significant stenosis in one of the carotids unilaterally. God has given two carotids, both sides. If one is having 80% stenosis, asymptomatic patient or plus minus symptom for which he has come for the carotid screening, when do you say that that patient should go for angiogram, one, and secondly for intervention? And this is the problem which in real world we face.
Look, there are two kind of
asymptomatic patient.
I got it. Two kind of things which happens. Like, I don't know about your experience. I say majority of people who have come to me for duplex scanning is when they had a stroke. Nobody has come for a duplex scanning of a carotid without any significant central nervous system symptoms. That's first and foremost important.
No,
And
sometimes.
second is, once a person has got a more than 70% lesion or 80% lesion, whatever the vessel, one or other is normal. Obviously, I feel is this is the person who has a risk of a significant cardioembolic stroke and should be dealt with interventions.
Right. But with the possibility of about 3 to 4% of the CVAs during the intervention.
If you don't do, I can show a slide, if you don't do an intervention, the risk is still higher.
Oh yeah, that. But it's very difficult to make the patient understand about it without the symptoms, significant symptoms.
Absolutely agree with you, but if you have a lesion, you can't close an eyes.
Last question, quick question, 30 seconds.
Ashok Dhar, you are talking about the percentage of stenosis, the diagnosis. In Indian setup, at least in my region, I have never done an angiogram or angioplasty on an asymptomatic patient, because as long as they're asymptomatic, they don't come to me, at least here. And except for there is a group That is, there are cardiac surgeons, before going for their bypass surgery, they get carotid Doppler done as a routine measure. And out of them, perhaps 5 to 6%, they come for intervention. But I do not remember in my last 12 years experience, even a single case of carotid angioplasty that I have done on an asymptomatic patient. That is our setup. But naturally, in the Western countries, we know there is clearly two groups, asymptomatic and symptomatic, and about that there is a lot of debate. But we are very clear in our mind that patient is always, they come only when they are symptomatic. Thank you.
Absolutely agree with you. That's what I said. Nobody comes to you for a duplex scanning without any symptoms. But the question is, some people they come with a stroke, some people come with a TIAs. And if they're symptomatic, if they come with a TIA with a significant 80% of lesion, not going to.
So even a
Okay.
60% lesion with a TIA, the level of evidence says, according to the
Medical
criteria,
treatment is needed.
yeah,
With 60%.
yeah, no, sir. Even 60% with a patient with a stroke should be treated either using a angioplasty or using a
No, no.
Okay, we have to stop now. Thank you very much.